Well, let's jump in and get to know you and sort of your background. How did you first get passionate about science? And I believe that Lego features somewhere in this, and I do want to
Yeah,
explore this.
yeah. It's kind of it's interesting. I've always really thought about biology as being reasonably modular, and I think when you look at things like the central dogma, you really do get a sense of this like Lego type of feature. So you have more or less the same building blocks that make up the nucleic acids, and then the ones that make up proteins. And then what happens is biology puts them in different combinations. And then you have these like wildly different outcomes as a result. So all of the different forms of life that we see on the planet are built using these same building blocks. And that's kind of how I started thinking about it at the very beginning. How do you put the different Legos together? How do you make new Legos? Things along those lines.
That's a cool story, and it sounds like, yeah, you weren't really that fascinated until you saw the outcome. So, do you think you're very sort of goal driven, outcome driven?
A lot of science isn't particularly interesting to most people until they can see the outcome, right? So for most people, that's, you work a number of years towards a specific goal and then you achieve that goal and you have some sort of deliverable that you can hold in your hand and say, like, I made this or I discovered this. And so I think it drives a lot of my thinking now about what type of science to do, namely that I want to be able to create something or to engineer or design something that really has a utility or has a function. And increasingly, that's trying to address what we think are really important global problems, like things like climate change or degrading plastics, or really pressing issues that biology hasn't really been able to solve.
And you had mentioned plastics degradation before, and I just had a thought. Are there opportunities for biologically engineering organisms that could do that process?
Yeah, so this is an area that is, I think, exploding now, where it was really driven by the fortuitous finding of a microbe near a plastics plant, where this microbe could actually eat the plastic.
Wow.
And so it would create these enzymes that it would spit out outside of the cell. The enzymes would chew up the plastic a little bit, and then it would take that into the microbe and then use that as a carbon source to survive. So, not unlike a plant subsisting off of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, this microbe would eat, say, like a PET bottle for lunch. And this was really exciting because this particular polymer has a half life of somewhere on the order of 400 years. So it takes a very slow, it degrades very, very slowly. And so synthetic biologists and protein engineers have been wildly interested in this class of enzymes, in particular to create better enzymes that can degrade plastics.
Gosh, yeah, talk about evolution. Bacteria eating plastics.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. There's a number of examples throughout history where we want a protein to have a specific activity. Usually it's to degrade something or to break a certain chemical bond. And the easiest way to find that is to go to a plant that makes that thing, whatever it might be. And inevitably, you find a bacterium that has evolved to use that as some sort of energy or carbon source. And it's fascinating because it really speaks to the adaptability of life and the genetic code and the central dogma. Organisms are somewhat readily engineerable to the point that you can, if we're wildly successful, imagine a plant that is tolerant to various environmental conditions. All the information is contained within that seed, and then you plant a lot of this plant, and it's resilient and it grows without needing much water or any sort of other resources, and it is very happy to just fix carbon dioxide and grow. And so, from an energy consumption standpoint, it is much, much cheaper to be able to rely on biological systems to do this. So, you could now do something that is beyond what biology has strived to do for about 1 billion years and pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere better. You could start to affect climate change by doing that. You could also allow plants and photosynthetic organisms to grow faster, right? Because they require this to build their biomass. And that has implications for how we go about our agricultural practices, the yield of crops. And so there's many other kind of even more synthetic biology applications that you could see downstream, where you could develop organisms that can pull carbon dioxide and then engineer pathways downstream that make any sort of product that you might want. And synthetic biologists are actually quite skilled at doing that latter part.